A company is a group organized to create a product or service, and it is only as good as its people, and how excited they are about creating. I do want to recognize a ton of super talented people. I just happen to be the face of the companies. Any product that needs a manual to work is broken. As much as possible, avoid hiring MBAs. MBA programs don't teach people how to create companies. Being an entrepreneur is like eating glass and staring into the abyss of death. Brand is just a perception, and perception will match reality over time. Sometimes it will be ahead, other times it will be behind. But brand is simply a collective impression some have about a product. Disruptive technology, where you really have a big technology discontinuity, tends to come from new companies. Don't delude yourself into thinking something's working when it's not, or you're gonna get fixated on a bad solution. Failure is an option here. If things are not failing, you are not innovating enough. For me, it was never about money, but solving problems for the future of humanity. Frankly though, I think most people can learn a lot more than they think they can. They sell themselves short without trying. Good ideas are always crazy until they're not. Great companies are built on great products. I always have optimism, but I'm realistic. It was not with the expectation of great success that I started Tesla or SpaceX. It's just that I thought they were important enough to do anyway. I always invest my own money in the companies that I create. I don't believe in the whole thing of just using other people's money. I don't think that's right. I'm not going to ask other people to invest in something if I'm not prepared to do so myself. I could either watch it happen or be a part of it. I do think there is a lot of potential if you have a compelling product and people are willing to pay a premium for that. I think that is what Apple has shown. You can buy a much cheaper cell phone or laptop, but Apple's product is so much better than the alternative, and people are willing to pay that premium. I don't create companies for the sake of creating companies, but to get things done. I don't spend my time pontificating about high-concept things. I spend my time solving engineering and manufacturing problems. I don't believe in process. In fact, when I interview a potential employee and he or she says that it's all about the process, I see that as a bad sign. The problem is that at a lot of big companies, process becomes a substitute for thinking. You're encouraged to behave like a little gear in a complex machine. Frankly, it allows you to keep people who aren't that smart, who aren't that creative. I don't think it's a good idea to plan to sell a company. I say something and then it usually happens. Maybe not on schedule, but it usually happens. I think it is possible for ordinary people to choose to be extraordinary. I think it's important to reason from first principles rather than by analogy. The normal way we conduct our lives is we reason by analogy. With analogy, we are doing this because it's like something else that was done, or it is like what other people are doing. With first principles, you boil things down to the most fundamental truths, and then reason up from there. I think it's very important to have a feedback loop, where you're constantly thinking about what you've done, and how you could be doing it better. I think most of the important stuff on the internet has been built. There will be continued innovation, for sure, but the great problems of the internet have essentially been solved. I think the best way to attract venture capital is to try and come up with a demonstration of whatever product or service it is, and ideally take that as far as you can. Just see if you can sell that to real customers and start generating some momentum. The further along you can get with that, the more likely you are to get funding. I think we have a duty to maintain the light of consciousness to make sure it continues into the future. I usually describe myself as an engineer. That's basically what I've been doing since I was a kid. I would just question things. It would infuriate my parents. That I wouldn't just believe them when they said something cause I'd ask them why. And then I'd consider whether that response made sense given everything else I knew. I wouldn't say I have a lack of fear. In fact, I'd like my fear emotion to be less because it's very distracting and fries my nervous system. I'm interested in things that change the world or that affect the future and wondrous, new technology where you see it, and you're like, wow, how did that even happen? How is that possible? I've actually not read any books on time management. If life is a video game, the graphics are great, but the plot is confusing and the tutorial is way too long. If something has to be designed and invented, and you have to figure out how to ensure that the value of the thing you create is greater than the cost of the inputs, then that is probably my core skill. If there was a way that I could not eat, so I could work more, I would not eat. I wish there was a way to get nutrients without sitting down for a meal. If you get up in the morning and think the future is going to be better, it is a bright day. Otherwise, it's not. If you go back a few hundred years, what we take for granted today would seem like magic, being able to talk to people over long distances, to transmit images, flying, accessing vast amounts of data like an oracle. These are all things that would have been considered magic a few hundred years ago. If you need inspiring words, don't do it. If you want to grow a giant redwood, you need to make sure the seeds are okay, nurture the sapling and work out what might potentially stop it from growing all the way along. Anything that breaks it at any point stops that growth. If you're co-founder or CEO, you have to do all kinds of tasks you might not want to do. If you don't do your chores, the company won't succeed. No task is too menial. If you're trying to create a company, it's like baking a cake. You have to have all the ingredients in the right proportion. I'm interested in things that change the world or that affect the future and wondrous, new technology where you see it, and you're like, wow, how did that even happen? How is that possible? It is a mistake to hire huge numbers of people to get a complicated job done. Numbers will never compensate for talent in getting the right answer. Two people who don't know something or know better than one will tend to slow down progress and will make the task incredibly expensive. It's okay to have your eggs in one basket as long as you control what happens to that basket. It's very important to like the people you work with, otherwise life and your job is gonna be quite miserable. Life is too short for long-term grudges. My biggest mistake is probably weighing too much on someone's talent and not someone's personality. I think it matters whether someone has a good heart. My mentality is that of a samurai. I would rather commit seppuku than fail. My motivation for all my companies has been to be involved in something that I thought would have a significant impact on the world. My proceeds from the PayPal acquisition were $180 million. I put $100 million in SpaceX, $70 million in Tesla, and $10 million in Solar City. I had to borrow money for rent. Optimism, pessimism, fuck that, we're going to make it happen. Patience is a virtue, and I'm learning patience. It's a tough lesson. People should pursue what they're passionate about. That will make them happier than pretty much anything else. People work better when they know what the goal is and why. It is important that people look forward to coming to work in the morning and enjoy working. Persistence is very important. You should not give up unless you are forced to give up. Really pay attention to negative feedback and solicit it, particularly from friends. Hardly anyone does that, and it's incredibly helpful. Solving high volume, high reliability, low-cost production problems is especially valued. Some people don't like change, but you need to embrace change if the alternative is disaster. Starting and growing a business is as much about the innovation, drive, and determination of the people behind it as the product they sell. Talent is extremely important. It's like a sports team, the team that has the best individual player will often win, but then there's a multiplier from how those players work together and the strategy they employ. The first step is to establish that something is possible, then probability will occur. The path to the CEO's office should not be through the CFO's office, and it should not be through the marketing department. It needs to be through engineering and design. There are really two things that have to occur in order for a new technology to be affordable to the mass market. One is you need economies of scale. The other is you need to iterate on the design. You need to go through a few versions. There have to be reasons that you get up in the morning and you want to live. Why do you want to live? What's the point? What inspires you? What do you love about the future? If the future does not include being out there among the stars and being a multi-planet species, I find that incredibly depressing. There's a tremendous bias against taking risks. Everyone is trying to optimize their ass covering. We have a strict no assholes policy at SpaceX. We should be excited about the future and striving to go beyond the horizon. We're going to make it happen. As God is my bloody witness, I'm hellbent on making it work. What makes innovative thinking happen? I think it's really a mindset. You have to decide. When Henry Ford made cheap, reliable cars, people said, "Nah, what's wrong with a horse?" That was a huge bet he made, and it worked. When somebody has a breakthrough innovation, it is rarely one little thing. Very rarely is it one little thing. It's usually a whole bunch of things that collectively amount to a huge innovation. When something is important enough, you do it even if the odds are not in your favor. When Tesla employees complained about their jobs, Musk reportedly said, "I would tell those people they will get to see their families a lot when we go bankrupt." When you struggle with a problem, that's when you understand it. Work like hell. I mean, you just have to put in 80 to 100 hour weeks every week. This improves the odds of success. If other people are putting in 40-hour work weeks and you're putting in 100-hour work weeks, then even if you're doing the same thing, you know that you will achieve in 4 months what it takes them a year to achieve. You have to be pretty driven to make it happen. Otherwise, you will just make yourself miserable. You have to say, well, why did it succeed where others did not? You shouldn't do things differently just because they're different. They need to be better. You want to have a future where you're expecting things to be better, not one where you're expecting things to be worse. Your will is the most accurate way to predict the future. A future where we are a spacefaring civilization is a far more exciting and inspiring future than one where we are not. Artificial intelligence is a fundamental risk to the existence of human civilization. Great differences in technology exist in the world about which even hardcore technologists are unaware. Hope we're not just the biological bootloader for digital superintelligence. Unfortunately, that is increasingly probable. Humans need to be a multi-planet species. I do think that having a good life for longer is better. We want to address things that can happen to you when you're old, like dementia. That's important, but I don't know, I definitely don't want to live forever. I think the most important thing is to create a self-sustaining city on Mars. That's, I think, the critical thing for maximizing the life of humanity. How long will our civilization last? I think we are at the dawn of a new era in commercial space exploration. I would like to die on Mars. Just not on impact. If humanity doesn't land on Mars in my lifetime, I would be very disappointed. If you go back a few hundred years, what we take for granted today would seem like magic: being able to talk to people over long distances, to transmit images, flying, accessing vast amounts of data like an oracle. These are all things that would have been considered magic a few hundred years ago. Life on Earth must be about more than just solving problems. It's got to be something inspiring, even if it is vicarious. Nothing can escape gravity, not even black holes, and they really tried. The space shuttle was often used as an example of why you shouldn't even attempt to make something reusable. But one failed experiment does not invalidate the greater goal. If that was the case, we'd never have had the light bulb. Transport will be one of the first to go fully autonomous. But when I say everything, the robots will be able to do everything, bar nothing. We want to open up space for humanity, and in order to do that, space must be affordable. When space travel becomes as common as air travel, the future of civilization will be assured. When you want to do something new, you have to apply the physics approach. Physics is really figuring out how to discover new things that are counterintuitive, like quantum physics. With artificial intelligence, we are summoning the demon. Worth reading Superintelligence by Bostrom. We need to be super careful with AI. Potentially more dangerous than nukes.